Awesome 106.9. Awesome radio. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. Can you hear it? Awesome. Awesome 106.9. Awesome radio. Awesome radio. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. Can you feel it? Awesome. Awesome 106.9. Awesome radio. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. Can you hear it? Awesome. Awesome 106.9. Awesome radio.
Started me on my way, gave me grace and strength just to see another day. And with each new day, brand new mercies I see. I'm telling you, that's what the Lord has done for me. For the many ways that you made, I thank you, Jesus. Keeping me day by day, I want to say thank you, Jesus. Tell me, do you really mind if I testify? Thank you, Jesus. About the Lord being my full supply. Thank you, Jesus. He's done so much for me. You and I can't tell it all. That's how good He is to me. And when I think of the blessings He's done for me, I have no choice. He's gonna give my praise. He sees us on the main line. Tell Him what I want. Call Him up and tell Him exactly what I want. This time I'm not only asking, I'm trusting for what I want. While I got Him on the line, why don't you get what you want?
WBISLP 1069, Winterville, Ayden, Grifton, Southside, Greenville, North Carolina.
Motivations with Glenn.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM, WBISLP. This is the Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn and Maseena Lewis. And we also are available 24/7 on awesomeradio.org. And please don't forget the various apps, Google Play for Android users, for Apple users or Mac users. The app is available at the App Store. Also, Roku TV. And please don't forget Amazon Alexa. And I did mention Roku TV. And Suddenlink GPAD 23. And I think Maseena has her mic muted, or if she can introduce herself.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So glad to be back.
I have been away being grandma and mommy and taking care of a lot of family things. But
I
I'm
did.
glad that
I did just see a nice bundle of joy.
yes, I love him. I adore him so much. He loves his grandma.
And Maseena actually has chosen a great topic of discussion. So credit goes to her. This is basically effects of trauma. And I would like for her to begin with the topic.
Yes, today we are talking about the effects of trauma, different types of trauma, because we're in a time right now where um, we're experiencing a lot of trauma. I think a lot of us are being traumatized in ways that we never imagined um, in our lives. I know I haven't. Between police brutality and things like that are going on around the world, people seeming to literally lose their minds, and the increase in murders and violence and senseless crimes um, that we, unfortunately, due to social media, uh, have all had the unfortunate experience of seeing things that we never would want to see. Not to mention the things that happen in our own everyday life. So it's important for us to be educated and aware about trauma, the effects that it could have on us, and things that we can do. It's good to start the conversation, start educating ourselves, is very important, because this is something that is becoming an increasing situation in our world every single day. The increase in school shootings, the numerous amounts of things that we see every day in the news, even if we're not physically going through those things ourselves, and actually physically present for those ourselves. It is traumatizing to see it. It's traumatizing not to be able to do anything about it. So we want to talk about trauma, what trauma is, the different types of trauma, which I never really realized that there are different types of trauma. I've always lumped everything into one thing, and it's not just one thing.
No, it's not. And if I could just add to that real quick, trauma, like Messina mentioned, there's different aspects of trauma. There's different types of trauma, but trauma itself could also be including and not ultimately relating to a serious injury or something to that effect. It could be just a thought of trauma by someone threatening you with some kind of violence or something, some kind of physical harm. That could be trauma in and of itself, just a threat of something serious. Messina.
Very true. Very true. The threat of something serious can be traumatizing to someone. Think about when you were little and you got in trouble with your parents, and if you were like me, you got spankings, and just the thought of it, the thought of, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble, would increase your heart rate. Your palms start sweating, you start getting nervous, you might feel itchy, just all these different side effects and different things that take over your body when you're in a state of trauma. Me myself, I've been through unfortunately a lot of traumatic events, and the reason I was thinking of this topic is because of my own battle to heal from that. It's important to heal from it. And sometimes we are we're being affected by trauma without even realizing that we're being affected by our trauma, and how our trauma and going through those experiences can change you.
as a person, how you interact from your day-to-day life, how you're able to function, um, the relationships, your ability to build healthy relationships, how your brain develops, the chemistry that it changes in your body and your brain, even for children, especially for children. Um, and adults, alike. Trauma is something that is very serious. It's a very serious thing, and it's something that we want to educate the public about, because it's important.
That's right. Um, as Maseena mentioned, the effects of trauma. Just briefly, I'll go over a couple of things that you can recognize. These are some common effects of trauma that you may recognize. Flashbacks, uh, reliving aspects of traumatic event or feelings as it has happened now, which can happen whether or not you remember specific details of it. To find out more, see information about flashbacks. Number two, panic attacks, a type of fear or a type of fear response. There are an egregious amount of your body's response to danger, stress, or excitement. And if I can skip down to one, if somebody wrote a quote, I felt my emotions more intensely because I think I have what I like to call emotional flashbacks. I feel emotions in the present that I couldn't or didn't want to or know how to feel in the past when I am triggered. So they said when they're triggered, they they normally feel that sensation of that flashback. If you
Of
can
that
understand
experience.
what I just said,
Yeah,
you said
the flashback of that experience. If you were examples, victims who have been in a gunfight, or have been around when somebody has shot in a gun in their vicinity or at them, or if you've been in a car accident, if you've been sexually assaulted, if you were violently attacked. All of these different things are things where people have flashbacks, and to be in environments and states that trigger them can cause them to have reactions even years and years after it's over, sometimes the rest of their lives. That's why it's
yeah.
important to know, you know.
And I agree with you because I'm a survivor of a motorcycle accident and I have a brain injury and a severe case of traumatic stress trauma. So I understand exactly what you're talking about, and I do feel that I will have this traumatic brain injury for the entire rest of my life. But having said that, do I feel any other kind of way? I live my life according to how I wake up in the morning, talk to God, and I say, well, I wonder what's going to be next as I walk out the door. What's going to happen next? Am I going to arrive to where I intend to go? Am I going to get there safely? Am I going to return home? Because I don't want another traumatic event to happen. But when we come back from the break, as I would like Maseena pull out the document for traumatic categories, there are different types of trauma. We'll review that when we come back from this first break. This is Awesome Radio 106.9 FM. Back in a moment.
Yeah,
Trauma. We'll
yes.
review that when we come back.
Hey, you guys, we're airing, letting you guys listen into the show. Hopefully, you guys can hear me.
Usually wait until the end of summer.
Hopefully, you guys can hear me.
That's because male wasps are typically useful consumers of food.
Uh,
They don't do anything worthwhile in the
Because
next
male
they help
useful
produce
consumers of food.
English slow.
called male stuffing. When food is
Okay, let me
brought
do
into
this.
the nest
Male
by females, other females will stuff their brothers headfirst into the unused nest cells. In the typical nest, males have a short life. The first exception to this pattern was recently discovered in Costa Rica. Researchers from the University of Washington in Seattle have discovered a species of wasp in which the males are not only in charge, but also help out in the nest. The female wasps still gather the food, but the males demand and get all they want, even from the... But the males were also observed fanning an overheated nest to cool it. That helps remove water during a flood, and they help take care of the larvae. The males of this species remain with their parent colony for an unusually long time for wasps. Yet, at any time, they can father a new colony. Other tropical species are now being studied to see if this behavior is unique. The Bible teaches that proper authority is respected when it comes from a spirit of servanthood. This pattern seems to extend even to wasps. Modern human culture needs to be reminded of the principle that when males pitch in and help, their leadership will be appreciated and followed.
Visit us online at creationmoments.com, where you'll find thousands of free biblical creation resources, articles, radio show transcripts, videos, and much more. Partial funding for this program is brought to you by Mitchell's Memorial Funeral Home of Winterville, 2423 E Winter Village Drive. Encourages you to plan ahead now so you will not have to think about it later. 252-702-1880 or 252-917-4420. Mitchell's, a generational name your family have trusted for years. Now it's your turn. Ask for Mr. Donovan Phillips, the funeral home manager, for pre-need arrangements. 252-702-1880 or 252-917-4420. Mitchell's Memorial Funeral Home of Winterville. Thank you for your support.
Thank you for listening to WBISLP 106.9 FM Awesome Radio.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for keeping it locked right here to Awesome Radio 106.9 FM. This is the Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn and Maseena. And I'm going to ask Maseena if she'd like to move to the document for trauma categories. There are different types of trauma. If we can move to that document. And I would like to begin with Maseena.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. I'm trying to get it. My computer is acting very slow, but give me one moment. Okay, so there are several different types of trauma categories here. So bear with me just 1 second, you guys. I'm so sorry. My screen here is moving slow. Okay, so we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different categories for trauma. So the first one being primary trauma. Primary trauma is a direct trauma. It's a trauma experienced personally, either as a victim or as a witness of the actual event, and includes both physical and psychological injury. Second trauma is indirect trauma, is where the individual may not have physically experienced or witnessed the traumatic event, but it still had a direct impact on them. I think an example of that would be like the tragic passing of a family member, or something to that effect. Acute trauma is the exposure to a single event and lasts for a limited period of time. Chronic trauma refers to an individual experiencing multiple traumatic events, often over a prolonged period of time. Then there's chronic trauma, complex trauma, which is generally refers to when an individual experiences chronic trauma in early childhood as a direct result of the actions of parents or other adult caregivers who should have been caring for and protecting them. I'm sure we can all think of examples of that. Burnout. Burnout is exhaustion of physical, mental, and emotional strength or motivation, usually as a result of prolonged involvement in a stressful, frustrating, or emotional demanding situation. It gradually builds up to a breaking point And the stress and frustration, it comes from all types of work-related stressors, such as paperwork and bureaucratic issues. This can even come from being in a bad relationship. Burnout. Yeah. The next one is burnout can happen to anyone in any profession, from store clerks, mail carriers, assembly line workers, system managers, to chief executive officers. But experiencing vicarious is significantly different. Hold on. Vicarious, I'm sorry. Vicarious trauma, the phenomenon of transmission of traumatic stress by bearing witness to the stories of a traumatic event. Professionals and caregivers who work directly with victims of traumatic events often experience this kind of trauma. Vicarious trauma is triggered or intensified by exposure to unexpected sensory images or reminders of trauma. We go through, psychologists, therapists go through this, constantly hearing about people's traumas can take a mental toll on you. And that's why often, if you are in the field of helping people with mental health issues, if you work with, people like the suicide hotline, rape victims, things like that, oftentimes in those professions, they want you to go to counseling yourself to help you unload all of that trauma that you take and absorb from others.
I
And then,
don't mean to butt in, but that could be almost like our first responders. That would include our communications operators, dispatchers, 911 dispatchers.
yes, that absolutely can. Law enforcement, firefighters, doctors, all experience that. They all lump into that field. Even if you're a teacher and you have students that come and maybe you help special need kids, or maybe you have experience with working in a school that is underserved and underprivileged. All of those different things go under that. Organizational stress, a complex interaction based on the principles of parallel processing, which occurs between traumatized clients, stressed staff, pressured organizations, and the social and economic environment. This can result in the system frequently replicating the very experiences that have proven to be so toxic for the individuals they are supposed to treat. Immediately when I read that, I think about what we go through with racism. I think about what women go through with sexism. I think about all of those, different things that can fall up under that category of organizational stress. Then there's also organizational trauma, a result of an entire organization experiencing a traumatic event or series of traumatic events, such as a natural disaster or the loss of a coworker or client. Again, what we're going through in society right now. Prime example of organizational trauma, organizational stress. A prime example of that, definitely. We also have another document here. I think it's this one. Nope, it's not this one. But this one also gives some examples of trauma, and actually it's the same thing. But one of them that wasn't listed is toxic stress, is the result of repeated exposure to traumatic events such as child abuse that activate the body's stress response system. One of the things that I wanted to read to you guys is on this other document because it was important, and I thought that it should be read. So hold on one moment. Can you take over while I find that right?
Well, you basically answered what I was going to ask you about chronic trauma. But you had mentioned the toxic trauma. That kind of ties into the chronic trauma, which relates to, I'm sorry, not the chronic trauma, the complex trauma, which relates to children. And that could be a form of child abuse. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. All of these different things have crazy effects psychologically.
It does.
In our day-to-day lives. I had this really good
Well, while you're looking for, I'll mention one more thing before we go to the break, because we will still have 30 more minutes of talk time when we come back. But the reason I mentioned our communication operators, our 911 dispatchers, is because they are the ones that are actually receiving a call before law enforcement or other first responders report to the scene, such as your paramedics, your emergency medical service. They're the ones that's actually receiving a call. Perhaps it could be somebody threatening to take their own life. Can you imagine the stress and the trauma that they're going through when they hear that call, and then the person ultimately carries out that? Could you imagine the amount of stress that puts a 911 dispatcher under?
Yeah. That being a nursing assistant, I was a nursing assistant. And even though it was a fulfilling job to be taking care of people during some of the most difficult days of their lives, it was very traumatic. I've had the unfortunate experience of having to stop and not be able to save a patient because they were a DNR. If for those that don't know what a DNR is, it's a do not resuscitate. That person had chosen that, if they were to stop breathing or anything like that,
We'll be back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, my name is Lola Hunter.
And I hope you guys are enjoying the show. I'm trying to find this document, but I thought it was this one. This one, trauma, barriers, right support, stress, the body, hormones. Oh, here we are. Yeah. I can't hear him. He won't be able to hear me. This site was excavated and cut and unlocked suddenly keyboard drop.
Are you a business or organization and you're looking for a few good people to join your work staff team? Are you now hiring? Need help? Want it now? Be listed and get noticed in our awesome radio on-air classifieds. Post your now hiring job descriptions on our website and have it announced here on this radio station and get your positions filled. Sign up today at WBISAwesomeRadio.org or contact us by phone 252-756-3137. People are looking for jobs. Let us help you find those people. Get your now hiring, need help, want it now announcements listed in our awesome radio on-air classifieds. Visit our website to learn more, WBISAwesomeRadio.org, or contact us by phone 252-756-3137.
We're back. You're listening to The Glenn Johnson Show. You can reach Glenn at glennjohnsonshow@gmail.com.
We are back. Thank you for keeping it locked right here to Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM. The Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn at Maseena Lewis. And with 30 minutes remaining for today's broadcast, I'm not going to delay. I'm going to give it right back over to Maseena, because I know she has a lot of information to share with our listening audience. Maseena.
Yes, definitely. So as I was saying, even though being a nursing assistant was a fulfilling job, it was very traumatic. There is no worse feeling than being told that a person is a do not resuscitate and you have to let them transition. That was traumatizing. And I'm sure many of our men and women in the medical field understand what I mean. But these are things, this is the reason why we want to talk about it, because it's important to be aware. It's important to, take the steps in working through those traumas. So I found what I wanted to read to you guys. So this is how our bodies respond to danger or stress, right? So when we feel stressed or threatened, our bodies release a hormone that's called cortisol and adrenaline. This is the body's automatic way of preparing to respond to danger, and we have no control over it. Stress triggers the body to think that it's in danger. This can have a range of effects, which are sometimes called freeze, feeling paralyzed or unable to move; flop, doing what you're told without being able to protest; fight, fighting, struggling, or protesting; flight, hiding or moving away; fawn, trying to please someone who harms you. Studies have shown that stress signals can continue long after the trauma is over. This might affect your mind and body, including how you think, feel, and behave. 4 years on, it's still problem, and it 4 years on, and it's still problematic. Viewing the world as a threat. Constant hyperventilation, hypervigilance rather, sleep problems, etc., which then lead on to deeper personal issues. Common mental health effects of trauma. These are some common effects of trauma that you might recognize: flashbacks, reliving aspects of trauma events or feeling as if it happened; panic attacks, a type of fear response. They're an exaggeration of your body's response to danger, stress, or excitement. To find out more information on that, we're going to talk about that. Dissociation is one way your mind copes with overwhelming stress. You might feel numb, spaced out, detached from your body, or as though the world around you is unreal. Is unreal. Like I feel my emotions more intensely because I think I have what I like to call emotional flashbacks. I feel emotions in the present that I couldn't or didn't want to or know how to feel in the past when I am triggered. This is hyperarousal feelings, very anxious, on edge, and unable to relax. You might be constantly looking out for threats or danger. Sleep problems, low self-esteem, trauma. Low self-esteem trauma can affect the way you view and perceive yourself, as well as how other people view and perceive you. Grief, experiencing a loss can be a traumatic experience, including someone dying, but also other types of loss, like breakups and no longer having friendships or family problems and things like that. Self-harm, hurting yourself as a way of trying to cope. Suicidal feelings, alcohol and substance misuse are also some of the things and behaviors that can happen because of trauma, going through traumas. Those are things to be paying attention to, looking out for, and it's important to get help. A lot of times, some people just feel like, I can get through it on my own, and it's okay if you can't. Some things, a lot of things, trauma, we're not meant to come into this life and go through such extreme trauma and suffering like that. And the mind is unable to process and hold so much of it.
Right. Could it be even the loss of employment? You might be at a job for a number of years, then all of a sudden receive a layoff notice or termination letter.
That's right.
That could be an awesome amount of trauma, shock.
Yeah, think about somebody who's worked at a company for 25 years, or a long time, and then the company does cutbacks and they get booted, or they lose their benefits. Think about the experience and the trauma all of us were going through, organizational trauma with COVID.
That's right.
Everything's shutting down. So many of us lost loved ones. You know, a lot of people went through a lot of depression because of that.
And
You
I
know,
think
so
I think we as Americans have endured a significant amount of trauma, just as you
absolutely.
mentioned, from COVID-19. Something
Yes,
that America we never thought we would experience here in America, but we are. So can you imagine the amount of trauma everybody's going through for that?
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. And you know, that's why it's so important that we have these conversations and educate the public, because we have to be aware of this stuff. Like I said, you can be behaving in a way or experiencing some of these behaviors out of trauma.
Yeah, let me just mention one 18th before we go to the next break. Then we'll have 20 more minutes of talk time remaining when we come back from this break. Excuse me. Just listen to me, ladies and gentlemen. Trust in God's protection. Depend on God's power. Rely on God's provisions. Wait for God's plans. Focus on God's perfection. Hold on to God's promises and believe in God's providence. The last one, search for God's purpose. Those are eight different P's concerning God. And I believe in all those. And if you would take heed to those, help us get through any traumatic situation.
That's right.
So back over to Maseena before we go to the break.
That's absolutely correct. But also, you want to make sure that you go and seek counseling. Go see a counselor. Some people say that, oh, they don't believe in going and talking to a counselor, but talking to a counselor can help you get out what you're holding inside. To talk about it, you don't understand how much talking about it will relieve some of the pressure.
Exactly. And before we go out to the break, I'll mention one more thing. The world may be uncertain, unstable, and always changing, but our God is not. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. 1 minute ago, Maseena, before we go to the break.
Absolutely. Stay prayed up. Find a network close to you to talk about it. We're going to into more when we come back, but definitely hoping that you guys are getting something from this.
Absolutely. And we have 1 minute before we go to the break. I'm going to say right now, just keep it locked right here to Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM, The Glenn Johnson Show. Motivation was Glenn and Maseena Lewis. Maseena, you want to take us out to the break? 40 seconds.
Yes, everybody. When we come back, we're going to talk more about trauma, the effects of trauma, and how to get some help, because we always want to talk about solutions, not just harp on problems. So we're going to talk about that when we get back, and just share some more. I'm hoping that this is educational for everybody, and that it inspires you to go and get some help if you need so.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, keep it locked right here to Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM, WBISLP. This is the Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn and Maseena. We will return after this brief break for our final 20 minutes. Back in a moment, ladies and gentlemen.
Keep it locked right here to the Glenn Johnson Show.
Partial funding for this program is brought to you by CT Cleaning Service, 919-345-5823. Nationally certified and bonded for COVID cleaning, commercial and residential, and for all general cleaning. CT Cleaning Service, 919-345-5823. Have a peace of mind that your place of worship, your office building,
Everybody, you enjoying the show?
place of work have been nationally certified COVID cleaned, disinfected, and sanitized. 919-345-5823. Thank you, CT Cleaning, for your support.
Justice Institute. Defending your rights as a parent and the citizen. Here's Brad Davis. PJI is celebrating its 25th year anniversary of defending freedom on Saturday, October 22nd. Join iconic speakers like Mike Huckabee, Fox News commentator and former governor of Arkansas, and Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, at the JW Marriott Anaheim Resort, a luxurious AAA four-diamond venue. You won't want to miss this very special celebration of justice. Support PJI by purchasing tickets or sponsoring a table today. Act now by visiting PJI.org. PJI provides legal representation without charge. Get exclusive email updates.
You are listening to Awesome Radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for keeping it locked right here to Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM, WBISLP. This is the Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn and Maseena. And this is our final 20 minutes of the broadcast today. So without delay, I'm going to give it right back over to Miss Maseena Lewis.
So now let's talk about ways that you can heal, to begin to heal from trauma. The first thing is you have to be willing to heal. You have to be willing and ready to let go. You have to be willing to do the work and work through it. The desire to feel better can be your best ally on the road to recovery. Don't give up into the ego of it all, which will try to tell you there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. The reactions you experience because of trauma are only responses. They are not who you are. And I've said this before. Who you have become because of your hurt and because of your trauma is not the real you. It's a defense mechanism. It's not you. The healed you is the real you. Number two, accept support from loved ones. Let people love on you. Let people be there for you. Let people be your shoulder to cry on. Make sure it's somebody you trust, because sometimes things that we experience in trauma cause us not to trust other people with good reason. But everybody has somebody that they can go to or talk to. And if you don't, start going to some groups with people. They have counseling groups where you can go and you can create bonds with people who understand where you've been and what you're going through, or maybe have just been through so much trauma that they can understand the emotions, and maybe not necessarily exactly what you're going through, but they can understand the emotions of it. Number three, seek the assistance of trained professionals. The great thing about going to therapy, going to counseling, is that they are able to help you navigate through things in a way that you didn't realize. Sometimes it takes time to find the right one. It's okay to hop just because one doesn't fit. That doesn't mean that there's nobody that can help you. Get a trained professional to help you navigate the waters and help you, get through everything. Number four, practice meditation and mindfulness. This is great. What goes under this, as you guys know, I'm a hypnotherapist. So hypnotherapy also helps with trauma, people getting through trauma, healing from trauma as well, because it's able to help you go into the place and look from an outside standpoint, not like you're reliving it, but like you're watching it go by, and able to do that in a way that allows you to process it easier and get through it easier and release it easier. So that and meditation, you know, I'm of course going to be an advocate for it. Absolutely, I've seen people really have some improvements even just off of one session. The fifth one is incorporate movement into your daily routine. Yoga, exercise, stretching, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's playing with your children. Um, it's very important to get active. Being active helps release endorphins. Endorphins fight off the stress and depressive hormones that get released from stress. And so, therefore, those stress chemicals decrease. Another thing that a lot of people don't know, uh, another thing that a lot of people don't realize, I think I've talked to you guys before about me wanting to be a naturopathic physician. And so I took one of my first classes to learn about diet and how to heal people using diet and things like that. And one of the things that I learned in that class is that your trauma, your stress, uh, that passes in your DNA. Every time that you stress, every time you're getting angry, every time you go through a trauma, it literally changes not only releasing cortisol into your body and making it, training your body to stay in that fight or flight state as a defense mechanism, but it also changes your DNA. And because of that, that's why when women give birth, if they had a stressful birth, you'll notice that the baby cries more. If you have a peaceful birth, or a peaceful pregnancy, I should say, you'll notice that the baby is calmer. With my daughter, she just had a baby. I went through whatever I could to make sure that her pregnancy was as stress-free as possible, because I wanted my grandson to come into this world, you know, calm, relaxed, and he's such a laid back baby. Like, he is just so laid back. The only time he really throws a fit is when he's starving. Not starving, but, you know, hungry. He don't play about his food. So, but, you know, when you when you go through stress, when you go through trauma, it changes your DNA, and that trauma is literally passed down into your child. It changes you the same way that if you start exercising, releasing endorphins and healing from your trauma, healing from your hurt, that will also change your body chemistry. Your body's able to heal itself better and do so many other things.
I'm going to add this to it before we go to the next final break. It's almost like being an alcoholic. I hate to interject this into it, but for the sake of the show, well, it's almost like an alcoholic. There's a couple ways to identify an alcoholic. There is the alcoholic, because you have to remember, a substance is a mind and mood altering chemical. There's an alcoholic that when he drinks becomes violent and angry, want to knock out walls, punch holes in walls and stuff. Then there's an alcoholic that enjoys laughter. He want to be funny, crack jokes all the time. So would you rather be near the person who's an alcoholic that want to crack jokes, or would be near the alcoholic that want to crack your head open?
Correct.
I hate to say it like that, but that's right, Maseena.
That is so true. Not only that, but when you use excessive alcohol, if you notice somebody that, if you've ever known somebody who started drinking and became an alcoholic, you notice that it changes them. They're no longer the same person that you knew before they became the alcoholic. A lot of people become alcoholics through trauma, through stress, through pain. A lot of people become addicts through that, because it's not necessarily that they're addicts. I believe that most people that become addicts are addicts because they need some way to cope. And
Yeah, wants to
that
cope
is
and
what they're using to cope, to get through every day. And they haven't healed from whatever has caused them to go down that path. That's why it's so important to heal.
And let me just mention this before we go to the final break and come back for the final 10 minutes. If you're ever in a position where you're faced with a person that's going through, say, for instance, alcoholic shock, or a person that might be overdosing from drugs, the person that you would most likely want to get treatment for and call 911 to get them the immediate help is the alcoholic. Because unlike the person that's overdosing from a narcotic, the alcoholic could possibly die from his episode of shock because their body cannot withstand the shock. So if you see a person that's going through an alcoholic situation, you want to get them help immediately. You want to get the person going through overdose help immediately also, but the one that's more important is the alcoholic. We have 40 seconds before we go to the break. Maseena.
Absolutely. When we come back, we're going to talk more about why it's so important to be aware of this, why it's so important to work through your traumas.
Very important to work through it. I'm not going to get into a lot since we're about to go to another break. This will be our final break before we come back for our final 10 minutes. So, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Awesome Radio 106.9 FM, The Glenn Johnson Show. Motivation with Glenn and Maseena. We will return after this brief break. Back in a moment, ladies and gentlemen.
Forgiveness is easier. You ever notice that it's easier to hug a dirty than it is to hug a stiff kid? The kid who needs the love says it will be cold in a hot place before you hug me. It's hard. Snarky is always harder to deal with than sin. That's true with God and us. Our dirt and sin have been forgiven. All of it. Don't let anybody kid you. It's not our dirt. It's our stiffness. Oh, Lord, make me play in your hands. And thank you for taking care of the dirt. I'm Steve Brown. You think about that. Share what you just heard with a friend. Go to youthinkaboutthat.com.
My name is Jayla, and you're to see to my papa, Glenn Johnson, on the radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for keeping it locked right here to the Glenn Johnson Show. Motivations with Glenn and Maseena. This is 106.9 FM, WBISLP, Awesome Radio. Winterville, Aden, Grifton, Greenville, North Carolina. Did I almost say South Carolina? Excuse me. Greenville, North Carolina. I'm going to give it back over to Maseena for our final 10 minutes of the broadcast today.
So, as if you listening to the show, we're talking about trauma, the different types of trauma, and how to get through it, how to heal from it. The reason why it's so important to be aware of this, because living in our trauma keeps us from being our best selves. It keeps us from having happier lives. And we end up carrying a lot of baggage through life that sometimes isn't even our own baggage. A lot of our trauma comes from outside, things outside of our control. And that's not a burden that we should have to carry all of our lives. It's important to work through that, because also going through a lot of stressful situations, going through a lot of traumas can cause you to develop mental health problems, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, the list goes on. The list goes on, not just becoming an addict, not just becoming an alcoholic, but it can also cause mental health conditions.
That's right. I agree with you. You want to go further? Oh, I want to know.
Yeah, I thought you was.
You had mentioned something earlier that I wanted you to email me on, and don't be afraid to elaborate. You said something to the effect of the better you is the change you or something.
Oh, yeah. I said that We are not our trauma.
Healed you. Yeah, they healed you.
We're not our trauma. The heal you is the real you.
Is the real you. That's what I wanted to know.
Real
Yeah.
you is the real you, not the person that you've become through your hurt, not the person that you've become through the trauma and the stress and the chaos. That's not the real you. That's the you that you had to become to survive and to be in defense. The real you is your healed you. The healed you is the real you.
And if you don't mind emailing me that, don't be afraid to elaborate.
Yeah, the healed you is the real you. That's a saying that I've been pushing for a while.
I like it.
It's the real you.
Yeah,
we have through stress and through pain and through trauma, certain parts of our personality have to become what they end up doing in order for us to survive. It's our brain's way of protecting ourselves. It's another defense mechanism. It's not a fight or flight or flop. It is just your body's way of protecting itself. Some people are mean and nasty because they grew up in environments where they had to. I always tell my son, Dave Chappelle said something during one of his acceptance speeches that when he was a kid, he used to cry a lot and he was just, people would pick on him and stuff. And his mom told him, sometimes you have to be the lion so you can be the lamb that you really want to be. And I thought that was so profound. That's what I think of with trauma. That's what I think of when you go through stress and when, life is chaotic and, you have to build up this lion version of you so that when you're in your safe place, you have the energy to be the lamb.
That's right. I want to share a traumatic event that I didn't know was a traumatic event at the time. But when I was in elementary school, apparently I must have been cutting up some kind of way. So they called me to the principal's office and gave me a letter to take home to my mom. On my way home, I took that letter and threw it in this lady's yard. I made one big mistake. I forgot that lady worked for the school board.
Oh.
She hand delivered it to my mom at the front door.
Oh, Lord.
All I remember after that, everything just went dark. But did something good come out of it? Yeah, I was the best student in school after that.
I bet you were.
I sure was. I said, oh my God, everything just went dark. I said it must have been May or June when I woke up. People were standing around me singing Christmas carols.
She knocked you to the end of the year.
Yeah, that's a true story. But I am the person who I am today because of that. She knocked some sense into me.
I bet she did.
I really mean it.
I bet she did.
We have 4 minutes remaining for today's broadcast, and I'm going to give that 4 minutes over to Maseena.
Yeah, so you guys, it's so important in today's society. Aside from what we go through in our personal lives, just the craziness of the world altogether, it's important to take care of our mental health.
Exactly.
It is at an all-time high of importance. It's the number one important thing. Well, the number one important thing is having a relationship with God. That is vitally important to have that spiritual connection above anything else.
Utmost importance.
The number one thing right after that is taking care of your mental health, because there's only one you. It's only one you. And if you allow this world or other people in their chaos to drive you crazy, you're not going to be able to live the life that you deserve. You're not going to be able to live life to its fullest capacity. You want to be living in this life, in this world, the healed you. Because that's the real you.
That's the real you. The healed you is the real you.
The healed you is the real you.
I love the way you put that. Don't forget to email me that. And please elaborate. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 3 minutes remaining for today's broadcast. I just want to mention what we're going to do next week with Maseena and Coach Vernon Garrison that I intended to do today, but I'm waiting for all the representatives to get back in touch with me. We'll be doing a topic on recycling. The number one thing that's recycled in America, because a lot of people thought that it was paper, cardboard, things that it's actually steel. Here in Pitt County, there is a procedure for recycling materials. And along with that, we want to talk about clean water and safe water, drinking water, because I found out some other information. The EPA recommends that you wash your vehicle at a car wash because they have a guideline they have to follow that when their water is used and contains only soot and all the other grime that comes off your car, they have a procedure where that's hauled away to protect the water quality that we have to ingest in our system. So they have a means to dispose of that stuff properly. So that's why I'll be having this topic next week. We have 1 minute remaining. I'm going to get that to Miss Maseena Lewis.
Yes, so we're gonna look forward to that next week. I'm big on recycling. I'm big on recycling. It drives me crazy in my house when people don't put things in a recycling bin.
I know.
I think everybody should be required to recycle. Like I think it should be a requirement of all businesses. It should be a requirement of everybody that lives on this planet to recycle. I mean, it's just responsible. It's being responsible for where we live. So I'm absolutely an advocate of recycling. I was raised by my grandmother to always recycle and take care of the planet. Back in the 80s, they really pushed that. I don't know what's going on right now, but we need to push that.
Because it's up to us to safeguard our environment, our planet,
and
particularly our drinking water. Because we all have to drink water. We all have to drink water, so it's up to us to safeguard our drinking water. There will be a representative available from Greenville Utility to handle the water filtration system at Greenville Utility. They handle water partition. I'm waiting for a representative from Pitt County, the PIO, Public Information Officer, to handle the recycling requirements in Pitt County. So hopefully we'll have all those representatives from, and the PIO from Greenville. So ladies and gentlemen, until next Wednesday, we surely hope you join in for that amazing episode or podcast. This is 106.9 Awesome Radio, WBISLP. We'll see you next week. From Maseena and myself, so long, everybody.
Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
WBI